Have you ever looked at a company's financial report and just wondered where the actual human beings are hiding?
Oh, all the time. I mean, it's usually just endless spreadsheets and, cold, hard data.
Right. It's so easy to lose the literal beating heart of a company when you're just staring at margins and logistics.
Exactly. You totally lose sight of the end user.
Well, I'm Jack,
And I'm Misha.
and we want to proudly welcome you to the fifth deep dive of simplifying 10K reports for you. We are super thrilled to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
So today's mission, we are unpacking the 2025 annual report of Edwards Lifesciences. You'll often hear them referred to by their stock ticker, EW.
Yep, EW.
And we're going to really break down their business model, look at their historic and future earnings growth, and figure out, what exactly makes up their competitive advantage in this crazy high-stakes medical equipment space.
Which is such a fascinating space because usually when you open an SEC filing, you brace yourself for like the driest regulatory boilerplate imaginable.
Oh, the worst. Pages and pages of risk factors.
Right. But Edwards Lifesciences made this really deliberate choice for their 2025 report. The very first thing you read is actually a letter from a patient.
Yeah, a patient named Mary.
Yeah, Mary. And she's describing her life just a few years before she joined an Edwards clinical trial.
And it is a jarring way to open a financial document. I mean, she was in hospice care. She was actively preparing for the end of her life. She literally wrote that at the time everything hurt and nothing made sense.
Man, that is heavy for an annual report.
It really is. She was making these quiet promises to herself, not even sure if she'd, wake up the next morning.
But then she goes from facing the imminent end of her life in hospice to living this super active, vibrant life. And she's now advocating for other patients.
Right, and that transformation is entirely due to a piece of medical hardware.
Which perfectly sets the theme for today.
Yeah.
It's this brutal, high-stakes intersection of high-tech engineering and human survival.
Exactly. Because Mary's survival, it wasn't some unexplained medical miracle. It was an engineering solution.
An engineering solution, yeah. I like that way of putting it.
Thanks. And to understand how Edwards manufactured that solution, you have to look at how they approached the human body. They call themselves the leading global structural heart innovation company.
Structural heart, right.
Yeah, and think about it. When most of us think about the heart, we think biology, right? Tissue, muscle, genetics. But Edwards treats the heart almost like a complex plumbing and engineering project.
That is exactly what it is. It shifts the whole perspective from pure medicine to applied physics, really.
Fluid dynamics.
Right, fluid dynamics. Because structural heart disease, it isn't about, blocked arteries. It's about the heart's doors, the valves just failing to open or close, right?
Because you have four valves acting as pressure systems, right?
Exactly. And when one fails, the fluid dynamics break down. Blood flows backward, the heart works overtime, and, well, the system just fails.
Which brings us to the actual device that saved Mary. The EVQ tricuspid valve.
The EVOQ.
Keeping with that plumbing analogy, if the tricuspid valve leaks, it is a catastrophic plumbing failure inside your chest. And historically, fixing that meant cracking the chest wide open.
Which is incredibly traumatic for the body.
Yeah.
Especially for someone in hospice.
Exactly. But the EVQ valve is essentially this high-tech artificial door. And the crazy part isn't just the door itself, it's how they install it.
Oh, the delivery mechanism is wild.
Right. The engineers designed it so it can be compressed, put into a catheter, snaked all the way up through a vein in the leg, and then deployed inside a beating heart.
Just wedging itself into place to stop the leak. It's unbelievable. And what's really cool is that treating the heart like an engineering puzzle, that's not a new pivot for them.
No, it goes way back.
Yeah, over 6 decades ago, their founder, Miles Lowell Edwards, he was an engineer, not a doctor.
An engineer, right.
He looked at the heart and literally just saw a pump that could be fixed with manufactured parts. And that philosophy has scaled massively. That scale is their competitive moat today.
A huge moat.
They boast the only complete portfolio in structural heart therapies.
But having a complete portfolio is great, but the real barrier to entry, the reason some startup can't just steal their market share tomorrow, is their talent pool.
The numbers are staggering.
Yeah, out of their 16,000 employees worldwide, over 1,600 are engineers.
Wait, 1,600?
1,600. That is 10% of their entire global workforce just dedicated purely to R&D and problem solving.
That is massive.
Yeah.
But it makes sense when you think about the regulations. Like in consumer software, a few engineers can build an app in a month.
Right, throw it on the App Store.
Exactly. But for a structural heart device, you need armies of material scientists to make sure the artificial surface doesn't cause blood clots.
Oh, for sure.
And biomechanical engineers building rigs to simulate like a billion heartbeats so the thing doesn't fracture after a decade. Plus the FDA approval process, that 1,600-person team, is an incredibly expensive barrier to entry.
They're basically running a massive applied science lab on a global scale. And that scale extends right into their supply chain, too. The report really highlights their resilient supply chain.
Which they need, right. They operate in over 100 countries.
Yeah, with 5 manufacturing plants worldwide. Because redundancy in medical tech is quite literally life or death.
Oh, totally. If Apple has a supply chain issue, you wait a month for a phone. It's annoying.
First world problems.
Right. But if Edwards has a supply chain hiccup, a hospital might not have the right size EVQUE valve for a scheduled surgery.
And patients like Mary cannot wait out a shipping delay.
Exactly. So having those overlapping capabilities means a natural disaster or geopolitical issue doesn't stop life-saving equipment from shipping.
Okay, so let's unpack this for a second. 1,600 engineers, 5 global plants. The overhead to keep this machine running must be just staggering.
Oh, yeah.
They can't just sell to their current hospitals and coasts. They have to find entirely new populations to justify this workforce.
Is that what that 2030 initiative is about?
Yeah, the Every Heartbeat Matters initiative.
Right.
They have this very specific goal to help 2 million underserved structural heart patients by the end of 2030. They are explicitly going after populations that don't currently have access to these therapies.
See, this is where my radar goes off. I see a corporate initiative targeting underserved patients, and I immediately wonder about the business motive.
Naturally.
Like, is this genuinely a philanthropic mission to help people? Or is it just a brilliant strategic move to expand their total addressable market? Create new customers to secure future earnings.
That is the exact question investors should be asking about any corporate social responsibility pledge. But the reality is, at least how Edwards frames it, those two motives are intrinsically linked.
Really? How
Yeah.
so? They don't see philanthropy and strategic growth as opposites. To expand into underserved markets, they have to train new clinicians, set up diagnostic pathways, and educate patients who might just think they're tired but actually have a failing valve.
Oh, I see. So they are literally building the infrastructure to diagnose the people who will eventually buy their devices.
Exactly. The report puts it bluntly. As Edwards leads, everyone benefits. They're arguing that by pushing into new markets, they achieve a clinical good, saving 2 million lives. But they also generate the economic value needed to fund that massive R&D engine.
It's a cycle. Identifying the underserved feeds the pipeline for the EVO2E valve, clinical and economic value right next to each other.
Exactly. Which means we really need to open the ledger and look at how that's translating to the bottom line for the shareholders.
Yes, let's talk numbers. Because we've established the noble mission, the engineering moat, the 2030 expansion plan, but how is the stock actually doing?
Well, this is where the story shifts from, engineering triumphs to harsh financial realities. The 2025 report has a chart comparing Edwards to the S&P 500 over the last 5 years.
Okay.
If we rewind to 2021, Edwards was riding high. The stock was at $142 a share.
Which was a massive boom time for healthcare stocks. Money was cheap, growth projections were crazy.
Right, but then the macro environment changed. In 2022, the stock took a huge hit. It dropped from $142 all the way down to $81.78.
Wow, it almost halved for a company that literally never started making life-saving tech.
Yeah. Now, by the end of 2025, the cutoff for this report, it recovered a bit, up to $93.45. But here's the kicker. Look at the S&P 500 in that same 5-year window.
Okay, what did the broader market do?
The S&P grew from 128.71 to 196.1 cents. So despite all the clinical breakthroughs, Edwards noticeably underperformed the broader market.
That is wild, especially because when I was looking at their earnings per share, the EPS, I saw this massive contradiction.
Oh, the 2024 spike.
Yes. In 2023, their basic EPS was $2.31. Then in 2024, it shot up to $6.98.
It looks incredible on paper.
Right. An EPS tripling in 1 year usually means historic growth. So how does a 300% jump square with a stock price that's lagging behind the S&P?
This is exactly why you have to read the fine print in a 10K. If you just look at that top-line EPS of $6.98, you'd think they sold 3 times as many heart valves.
Which they didn't.
No, they didn't.
Yeah.
Out of that $6.98, a whopping $4.64 came entirely from discontinued operations. Yep.
Discontinued operations, meaning they didn't grow the core business, they just sold something off.
Exactly. A strategic pivot. They probably sold a non-core division, maybe an older product line, so they could focus just on structural heart tech.
And that sale brought in a huge one-time influx of cash that temporarily juiced their earnings.
Yeah, it's standard accounting. When you divest a segment, you record the income. It's accurate cash flow, but it totally distorts how the day-to-day operations look.
It's like a restaurant chain bragging about a record profit year, but then you look at the books and realize they didn't sell more burgers.
Right.
They just sold their massive parking lot to a real estate developer. Like, sure, it's a huge cash injection and legally it's profit, but you can only sell the parking lot once. It's not sustainable.
I love that analogy. You can only sell the parking lot once. So to really understand 2025, we have to strip out all that noise from the discontinued operations.
We need to see how the actual burger selling or, well, valve selling business is doing.
Exactly. We have to look at net income from continuing operations. And when you do that, it's a much more sober picture.
Let's run those numbers. What was the continuing net income?
In 2023, it was $1,223 million.
Yeah.
In 2024, it grew to $1,400.9 million.
Which is solid. That's healthy growth for their primary business, totally independent of the spin-off cash.
Right. But then in 2025, net income from continuing operations actually dipped. It fell to $1,060.1 million.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And because of that, the basic EPS from continuing operations for 2025 settled at $1.81. Factoring in some tiny remnants of other accounting, the total basic EPS landed at $1.84.
Wow. So the real trend is a baseline of $2.31 in 2023, an artificial one-time spike to $6.98 in 2024 because of the sell-off, and now this harsh reality of $1.84 in 2025.
Yep. That is some serious volatility for a company whose physical products are, the definition of stable engineering.
Which means as an investor, you have to hold two conflicting truths in your head at the same time.
Exactly.
On the clinical side, you are funding world-changing engineering. You're literally pulling patients back from the brink of death. But financially, you're looking at a reality that requires intense scrutiny, understanding weird accounting spikes, and just having a lot of patience during market underperformance.
Reconciling those two things is the whole challenge here.
It really is. I mean, we started this deep dive looking for the human beings hidden behind the spreadsheets, and we definitely found them.
We found Mary.
Right, Mary, whose life was saved by the EVOQE valve. We found that army of 1,600 engineers treating the heart as a solvable fluid dynamics problem. We saw a global supply chain built to literally survive disasters just to get devices to the people who need them.
And we saw their roadmap for the future. The Every Heartbeat Matters goal of reaching 2 million underserved patients by 2030. It proves you can merge market expansion with clinical philanthropy.
Because expanding the total addressable market is the only way they can sustain that massive research overhead.
Exactly.
But the 2025 ledger definitely showed real financial volatility. The gap between continuing operations and those massive one-time spikes proves you can never just take a top-line EPS number at face value.
You really can't. You have to strip away the noise.
Otherwise, you'll mistake the sale of the parking lot for a boom in burger sales.
That tension between their incredible medical legacy and their fluctuating financial performance is really the defining story for Edwards right now.
It is. Which leaves us with a final kind of lingering thought for you to mull over as we wrap up today.
What's that?
Well, Edwards Lifesciences has spent over 60 years building this unbelievable legacy of innovation. They add years to human lives. You can't put a price tag on what they did for Mary.
No, you really can't.
But in the ruthless, profit-driven world of the S&P 500, a legacy of saving lives doesn't give you immunity from shareholder demands. So, if a company's financial charts don't perfectly mirror their clinical breakthroughs and the stock keeps trailing the broader market, how long can a legacy alone sustain investor patience?
Man, that is the ultimate test. What does the market value more? The steady accumulation of capital or the steady accumulation of saved lives?
Exactly. Thank you so much for joining us for this fifth deep dive of simplifying 10K reports for you.
Keep stripping away the noise.
Keep looking for the people behind the math and always keep questioning the numbers behind the narratives. We'll see you next time.